Hi boys and girls, this is Miss Cunha. Today I am doing this presentation for you to go over analyzing poetry. Now April is Poetry Month, okay? So we're going to be looking at a lot of poems throughout the month of April, and I'm going to go over today a strategy that you can use when you are analyzing a poem and in order to help you better understand the poem. Okay, so I know that a lot of times poetry can be tricky because the poets usually use lots of different figurative language. Many times they use words that we interpret in a certain way, but they're using it in a completely different way. So poetry can sometimes be very tricky, even though poetry is so much fun to read. So today we're going to take a look at this strategy that we can use. Some of you, it might be familiar to you, so this is going to be used more as a review. And then others might have never heard of it before, so you're going to learn about it. Okay, so it's TP-CASTT. This is the strategy that we use to analyze or to help us better understand a poem, right? The meaning and the real meaning behind this specific poem. So what I need you guys to do, boys and girls, is to take notes on my presentation today. So on Google Classroom, I posted a template that you may most definitely use. If you have a printer, I would suggest that you print the template and you can use it to fill in notes as I go through my presentation. If you do not have a printer, that's okay. What you can do is open the document on Google Classroom, see how you should set up your notes, and then you can just write down your notes on a piece of paper based on how the template is set up, okay? So that you can always use this and refer back to this as we keep talking about poems for the month of April. Okay, so TP-CASTT actually stands for something, okay? It's an acronym. You know Miss Cunha loves acronyms, and I love acronyms because it helps you remember certain things, okay? So the T stands for title, P, paraphrase, C, connotation, A, attitude, S, shift, T, title revisited, and then the last T, theme. Okay, so I'm going to go over what each of these things represent. Okay, what about paraphrase? What about attitude? Things like that. I'm going to go over it first, and then I am going to read you a poem, and we're going to use this strategy to better understand the poem, okay, to analyze the poem. So you are going to need to watch this video until the very end, okay? Make sure that you're taking down notes as I go through the PowerPoint. Remember, boys and girls, that you can pause this video at any time to take down notes and then just, hit play again when you're ready. Okay, so let's take a look at the first T. So T for title. The first thing we need to do before we even start reading a poem is to analyze the title, okay? Read the title. What do you predict the title will be about based on what the title is, right? Or I'm sorry, based on, what do you predict the poem will be about based on the title? And you want to write down your predictions. Or you can just, remember what your predictions are, okay? But when we annotate together, we want to make those predictions. And then the next step after we read the title and analyze it is to actually begin reading the poem, okay? Once we're done reading the poem, then we're going to move on to the next letter in TP-CASTT. So now we're looking at P. P is to paraphrase, okay? We know what paraphrase means. When we paraphrase, we are putting things in our own words. We're using an idea of someone else, but putting it in our own words that we understand, okay? So what you want to do now is, after you read the poem for the first time, is paraphrase it, okay? So put it in your own words. What does it say? And then the C is for connotation. Now, connotation has to do with the words, right? The specific words that the author, or the poet in this case, decides to use. So we want to look closely at the words choice, right? What words do the does the poet use throughout the story? Because that's important. So we want to analyze any figurative language, right? So figures of speech that we see throughout the poem. Because a lot of times, figurative language contributes to the meaning, right? It's the poet is trying to help you think of certain things in a specific way. Like if they're giving either a metaphor or a simile, where they're trying to compare something, right? And they're comparing it to make you better understand what they're trying to say. So figurative language is very important. Then we also want to identify the devices that will allow you to support the conclusion you'll draw about the poem. For example, is there a specific word that's always repeated over and over, right? All of that has to do with connotation. So we need to look out for that. Figurative language, connotation, repetitive words, things like that. Then A is for attitude. Now, the attitude that the poet has throughout the poem is very important. We want to look closely again at his or her words. We want to look at images that they paint a picture of in our minds. We want to look at the details that they decided to include because that all has to do with their attitude towards a specific topic, all right? So this is where tone comes in. The tone is the attitude of the speaker towards the subject of the poem, okay? How does the speaker feel about the subject of the poem, okay? Tone can change. This is so important because maybe at the beginning of the poem, the author feels one way, but then at the end, that changes, right? The tone, his attitude towards that might change. That's also important to look at. And then we have S for shift. So remember I was talking about change? This is what shift is. What is the shift in the poem? Maybe there could be more than one speaker, or maybe there's more than one tone, right? Maybe at the beginning, let's say he's talking about, I don't know, being out of school for so long. Maybe at the beginning he's excited about it, but then there's a shift, there's a change. The tone that the author might have towards that subject changes. Now he no longer is excited about it. He's bored. He wants to go back to school, okay? Or there could be also a shift in time, right? Like a couple of years later or a month later, whatever it is. Then we have the first T at the end is for revisiting the title. So you know how at the beginning, before we started reading the poem, we made predictions on what the poem would be about based on the title? Well, towards the end, once you're done reading the poem, obviously, you're going to revisit your predictions, okay? You're going to revisit the title and think to yourself, why might the title be that title, right? Why did that poet use that title in for this poem, right? What is there a meaning behind it? Is there a specific reason why he included that specific title? Okay, and you want to look at your predictions to see if your predictions were correct. And then think of what other meanings might the title have now that you've read the poem, okay? And then we have the last T for theme. Now we've been talking a lot about theme throughout the year, so we know what theme is, right? So we want to think of what is the message, what is the lesson that the author or the poet is trying to convey with this poem, okay? So we're going to practice. Miss Cunha is going to read to you a poem, okay? And you're going to follow along on the screen. And then we're going to take a look at TP-CASTT and analyze the poem, okay? So we know that the first T is to look at the title, right? We want to analyze the title. So here's the title, Moco Limping. Now, when I think of limping, I think of maybe someone being hurt, right? So they're limping. Maybe there's something wrong with their foot, or I don't know, maybe their leg. So I think of some type of like imperfection almost, right? So there's something wrong. Then notice the picture also. Sometimes poems will have pictures. You also want to analyze it. So I see a very cute puppy, right, in the picture. So when I'm looking at the title, Moco, maybe that's the dog's name. Maybe Moco is limping. Maybe there's something wrong with his paw or his leg. Maybe. Okay, that's my prediction. So Ms. Cunha is going to now read, or let's take a look at this because we included this. So the title, we obviously would want to make a prediction, right, of the meaning of the poem based on the title. So this was my answer. A being or something that is injured, right, because the word limping, either physically or emotionally, right, and it's probably based on a dog because of the picture. Okay, so that's our prediction. We're going to find out if we're right. So I'm going to read the poem and I want you to follow along, boys and girls, as I read on the screen. You will notice that on your assignment for digital learning, this poem will be on your document. So you will revisit this poem later on. Okay, so this presentation is very important, okay, because it's going to help you with answering questions later. So listen carefully as I read. Moco Limping. My dog hobbles with the stick of a leg that he drags behind him as he moves. And I was a man that wanted a beautiful, noble animal as a pet. I wanted him to be strong and capture all the attention by the savage grace of his gait. I wanted him to be the first dog howling in the pack, the leader, the brutal hunter that broke through the woods with thunder. But instead, he's this risky little canine that leaves trails in the dirt with his club foot. He's the stumbler that trips while chasing lethargic bees and butterflies. It hurts me to see him so abnormal, so clumsy and stupid. My vain heart weeps knowing he is mine. But then he turns my way and looks at me with eyes that cry out with life. He jumps at me with his feeble paws. I feel his warm fur and his imperfection is forgotten. Okay, so let's take a look at this. I see, okay, because we know that the next step is to do what? Paraphrase in our own words, okay? So let's paraphrase this poem in our own words. So we see that obviously the author or the poet it's written in first person, right? We know that because I see I wanted, I feel, I wanted, right? It hurts me. So I see all these clues that are hinting at it being in first person. We see the character's feelings and thoughts, right, about his dog, right? And it specifically starts with my dog. So I know the subject is, or the topic is his dog. Now, how does he feel about his dog? Now, notice at the beginning, he feels a certain way, right? It's like his expectations of the dog. And then that kind of changes. It's kind of like reality hits him, right? Instead, this is what he has. But then at the end, it kind of shifts again, where he says that dog looks his way, and there should be a space there, and so he cries out with life, he jumps on him, and all of a sudden, the imperfections or the flaws of the dog are forgotten. So let's talk about this. Now, here is my paraphrased. My dog has a bad leg and hobbles. I wanted a strong dog, a leader, one that was graceful, but he is slow. But he is slow and clumsy. I am too proud to admit that he is mine, but when he shows me love, I forget about his imperfections and my ego. Okay, so that's my paraphrase. And that's basically what it's saying, right? Notice this here that I'm highlighting, this first part of the poem, it's like his wish, right? He wished, like he wanted to have this beautiful, noble animal as a pet. He wanted him to be strong, right? He wanted him to capture everyone's attention the way he walked. He wanted him to be the first dog to howl in the pack. He wanted him to be a leader, right? And a hunter. He wanted him to go through the woods like thunder, right? So that's his expectation. But the next part, and also on the next column as well, this is like his reality. Instead, he has this like clumsy dog, right? With the club foot. Does anybody know what a club foot is a birth defect where like the foot is kind of like twisted. It's not, properly positioned. So he obviously has something wrong with his foot, right? It says that he stumbles and he trips as he's chasing lethargic bees and butterflies. And it hurts him to see him so abnormal. What does abnormal mean? Abnormal means not normal, right? Out of ordinary. He also says he's clumsy and stupid, right? And then notice this sentence, this is so important. It says, my vain heart weeps knowing he's mine. It's like his heart cries out knowing that this dog belongs to him. So it's like he doesn't want him to be his, right? It's kind of sad. And then, like these words, right? The but, right? It's telling us like there's a shift. So, but then when he looks at him and he cries at him, right? He looks at him with his puppy eyes and jumps on him with his paws. He feels his warm fur. All of the imperfections, all of the things that he thought were abnormal are forgotten. Like he doesn't care about them, right? And he loves his dog the way he is. Okay, let's move on. So let's look at the connotation. So we want to highlight words, boys and girls, when you're annotating in order to analyze a poem. You want to annotate by highlighting words that you see that are important, right? Like what ideas or feelings are associated with the words that you choose that are important, or phrases. So let's take a look. Some words that I would highlight would be hobbles, rickety, little canine, clubfoot, stumbler, abnormal, and feeble. Feeble are like frail or weak. Okay, so all of these words are like negative, right? The connotations or what the author is trying to say or connect with is something broken, right? Something that's broken or something that's useless, right? So that's one attitude or one tone he has. Where on, remember the beginning where he was saying he was kind of showing us his wish, what he wished he had. So we would have highlighted savage grace, gate leader, brutal hunter. All of these words mean strength, right? And powerful, being powerful and having power. So these would be words that we would highlight, right? They're important in the poem. Let's continue on with connotation. So again, highlighting those specific words. Remember when he says, my vain heart weeps, knowing that the dog is his? That means what? Selfishness, right? Definitely selfishness. Then, towards the end, when that tone changes and that attitude towards the subject of the dog changes, he uses words like imperfection is forgotten. Oh, sorry. So it's like he forgets that the dog's imperfect, right? So these words mean resilience, forgiveness, right? He's forgiving the reality and he loves his puppy or his dog the way he is. All right, and now let's take a look at attitude. Remember, attitude is the speaker's attitudes towards the subject or the situation. We know the subject in this poem is the dog, right? So let's take a look. The answer. The speaker starts with a negative tone towards his dog, right? Very negative. And he talks about what he wished the dog was like and what he really is like. That's all negative to us. But then he shifts into hopeful, yet also a selfish tone, right? But then he quickly shifts again. So there's like two times where it shifts, and there's three types of attitudes. His first attitude is his wish, what he wished his dog would be like. His other attitude is his reality and how he's upset about it. And then that last attitude or tone is the fact that he accepts his dog the way he is, right? So he returns to a loving tone at the end of the poem. Okay, let's move on. Now the shift, we kind of been talking about the shift, right? Miss Cunha kind of went overboard and I kept talking about it. But the shift is, remember that when we're looking at the shift, we want to look at, is there a change, right, in the speaker or the speaker's attitude? And there definitely is, right? There are shifts in attitude for sure, as we've been saying, right? And those words and but definitely help us with that. Okay, so we definitely know there are shifts. And then remember our next T is to look at the title again. So remember that when we looked at the title the first time, we said, okay, limping we kind of thought was someone being hurt, right? Injured. And it was probably about a dog because of the picture. Maybe Moco was his name, right? So our prediction was pretty accurate, right? And now that we did read the poem, we do know that it was about a pet, right? We know it was about the poet's dog, okay? So we always want to make sure that our inferences or our prediction was correct. And the last thing we come to is, of course, our theme. So what is the author saying, right? What is his comment or on his subject? Or what is his overall message or lesson that he wants us to learn from this poem? So here's one theme, because we know about themes. We know that there could be more than one theme, right, in a piece of text. So here's one theme that we can get out of reading Moco Limping. Unconditional love means looking past imperfections. And isn't that so true, right? Unconditional love, like when you love something so deeply, you look past their flaws or their imperfections and they don't matter to you, right? So I hope well, first of all, I really enjoyed this poem and I hope you did too. But I really hope that this strategy, TP-CASTT, is going to be beneficial to you when you're analyzing poetry. Okay, because we are going to look at poems throughout the month of April, and this is definitely going to help you. So again, don't forget, and you have these in your notes, to always look back at T, title, P, paraphrase, C, connotation. It's like the words, right? A, attitude, S, shift, the change, T, title, revisited, right? You want to go back to the title. And then the last T, theme, right? The message. All right, boys and girls, I hope this was clear to you. I will see you soon. Bye.